Over at ITV, the commercial British channel, that is, of course, the home to the successful brands like Good Morning Britain, Loose Women, This Morning, you get the picture. Well, get this, there's over 200 plus redundancies happening. Now, I feel incredibly sorry for all of those people. Let me just get that out very clear, because as I said to you many times here on the show, Chum, it's always the hard workers, you know, it's the grafters, you know, the ones that absolutely work incredibly hard behind the scenes, turning these shows around day in, day out, coming in at the crack of dawn. They're not on £1 million a year like Susanna Reid, all that sort of stuff, but they get very, very little credit. Now, what's happened, as you can imagine, it's not just about the ad revenue, but it's about digital, you know, movement, as it were. You don't need cameramen, you can have robotic cameras. You don't need auto cue, that can be worked by the presenter. You don't need editors, that can be done by, you know what I mean? Everything is now moved on. But what's fascinating is behind the scenes of this one particular, allegedly well-loved brand that is Loose Women. Well, they're all fighting, well, how can I put this nicely? Like rats in a sack, and it's not turning out good as ever. Let me explain. Morning, nice to see you, chums. Thank you so much for joining me today. Lovely to have your company. As I said, you know, I've said this many times, and I know maybe you're sick to death of hearing this, but the thing is, television is a very brutal game. But I think in any sort of thing, you know, we saw it recently on Broadway where Patti LuPone fell out with Audra Hamilton, I think it is, who's currently playing Gypsy. And, you know, it's basically about one-upmanship, star power, what am I getting, that sort of stuff. That's truly what it's about. You know, people worry and they get concerned about whether they're going to get their rightful money. Do people not like them? And the biggest problem that you've got over at the ITV brand that is Loose Women is this. You know, Loose Women's a bit like The View in America. And I know The View, which is owned by ABC Disney, is really struggling right now in the ad revenues and ratings and stuff like that. Whoopi Goldberg, apparently she can't manage on the money that they pay her. Yeah, imagine if she was on the sort of salary we're on, average humans, as it were. Can you imagine? Well, if these people can't manage, it's ridiculous, right? And the other side of it is, I think it's really rude to say that, because people in television, and I can say this during my times, you know, you have really good periods and very bad periods. It doesn't matter what you do. In the good periods, you don't tell people that, simply because, of course, it doesn't necessarily resonate with the audience. It's great. Over at Loose Women, you see, they've done all of this sort of stuff where they've had the free clothes, the free makeup, and part of the deal, you see, is that they have to pose in this, and then the person who's given them the clothes, you know, leading brand, they get tagged in all the Instagram, social media posts, that sort of stuff. But the bigger problem behind the scene is the fact that now the blame game has set in. And it's set in simply because they're all looking at each other. Everybody from the lead host, that could be either Christine, now the blame game is truly set in, and that could be everybody from the lead host like Christine or Ruth or Jane Moore, whoever. They're all working out, well, why are we getting the bullet, and then looking at each other to decide, of course, who's the weakness in the party. You know, it's really like that. I know, for instance, that many behind the scenes of these girls are leaking out the secrets, etc., about the things that they've had, the surgeries, the weight loss jabs, you name it. Behind the scenes, it is as I said in the intro, like rats in a sack, you know, because they're all clinging on. But as I pointed out also in the intro, there is nobody, literally nobody in the top layer, you know, of management that is getting the bullet. It is all the people at the lower end, the cameramen, the floor manager, you know, the staff that do all the running around, even the cheap runners that were getting at like £150 a day. And this was their entree into, you know, television. Well, very soon they'll be doing it for just expenses only, if they're lucky, and they'll have to fight for that. Now, don't think that this is just going to the major brands. Over at shows like Peston, which is the political show, well, even they're having their budget scrubbed and put down. And basically, you know, if you're an MP looking to get on that show, well, suddenly you've got more problems as well, because whether you've got a fee to appear, they're now going to have to look at that fee and to see if you're worth it and what they're willing to offer you. Either way, Preston plummeting politics and Loose Women fighting behind the scenes. As I said many times before, why don't they just stick a camera in the green room, the office, or the backstage, and let us watch that? I think it'd be far more entertaining rather than these cheesy grins pretending they're all the very best of friends. Anybody else agree? Neil Sean in the very heart of London.